Here's something to think about. When everything around you falls apart, what's the real deciding factor between those who make it and those who don't? It's not your bug-out bag. It's not your food stash. And it's definitely not just the gear you've collected. The real game changer is your mindset. When a real SHTF moment hits, whether that's a natural disaster, a power grid failure, or civil unrest, it's how you think that determines what happens next. And the scary truth is, most people haven't trained their minds for that kind of pressure. We've all seen it. A hurricane warning goes out, and people ignore it until it's too late. A blackout stretches from hours to days, and folks are left cold, confused, and completely unprepared. Or a wildfire explodes out of nowhere, and families realize they have no plan and no time to figure one out. Behind every one of those scenarios is a mindset that failed them. Not because they were lazy or stupid, but because they never stopped to question their assumptions. That's what we're going to tackle today. In this video, we're breaking down 5 of the most dangerous mindsets people carry into a crisis. Beliefs that feel normal in everyday life, but turn deadly when things fall apart. I'm going to show you what those mental traps look like, how they sneak up on people, and most importantly, how to shift your thinking now, before the pressure's on. So whether you're deep into prepping or just getting started, this is one of those topics that cuts through gear, location, or experience. These mindsets are universal, and they're avoidable. Let's get into it, because no amount of supplies can save you if your thinking locks up when everything hits the fan. Mindset number 1 is the all-too-common thought, somebody will save me. You might also hear it called the dependency delusion. In everyday life, it's easy to see how we get lulled into it. If a pipe bursts in your house, you call a plumber. If a fire starts in your backyard, you dial 911, and firefighters arrive with sirens wailing. When the power goes out in your neighborhood, you usually expect it back on in a matter of hours. Government agencies, public utilities, and first responders do an amazing job most of the time, so it's natural to develop a habit of leaning on them, trusting that if something big goes wrong, they'll step in and handle it. However, the danger arises when we assume that same quick response will be available in a widespread crisis, like a massive earthquake or a Category 5 hurricane. Sure, first responders still want to help, but they'll be overwhelmed in a serious situation with phone lines jammed, roads blocked, and hundreds or thousands of urgent calls coming in all at once. Those rescue trucks or ambulances might not be able to squeeze down your street if there's heavy flooding, or if power lines and debris block the path. Emergency responders might have to prioritize hospitals or major shelters, leaving entire neighborhoods in limbo. Then there's the question of relief organizations like FEMA or the Red Cross, which can do a lot of good, but are rarely equipped to address each individual's unique challenges right away. We've seen real-life examples where people assumed a rescue boat or relief truck was on its way, only to learn that logistical snarls kept it from ever arriving, or it arrived days later than expected. Not only that, but disasters can sometimes strike multiple states at once, forcing even the best-equipped agencies to ration their resources. For example, if a hurricane blasts across state lines, officials have to scramble to figure out which areas need urgent help and which can wait a bit longer. That leaves some towns cut off far longer than residents ever imagined. If you're sitting there, convinced help will roll in by dinner, you can end up missing your window to evacuate, stockpile extra water, or even set up a workable off-grid heat or power source. The worst part is that the "somebody will save me" mindset encourages passivity right when you need to be most active. You end up underestimating threats, postponing crucial decisions, and generally doing too little, too late. Maybe you don't board up your windows because you figure the city will keep the infrastructure intact. Or you don't store a few days of water and non-perishable food because you think the grocery trucks will keep showing up. But once a major event hits, the time for easy prep is gone, and the lines at any open store will be overwhelming. Overcoming this mindset starts with honestly asking yourself, what if help can't get to me for a while? That simple question changes your perspective. Suddenly, buying extra water storage or a small generator isn't a sign of paranoia, but a practical safeguard. Talking with your household about how to handle 2 or 3 days without electricity or municipal water doesn't feel like overkill. It feels like common sense. The point isn't to isolate yourself or declare war on public services. It's simply to acknowledge that in large-scale chaos, you are, in many ways, your own first responder. Taking these steps now provides peace of mind and calmer times and real security when everything else is falling apart. But setting up your own rescue plan also has a flip side, because if you think you can just whip something together on the fly without training or actual practice, you might be in for a nasty surprise once real danger knocks on your door. Mindset number 2 is, I'll just wing it, or what I like to call the chaos gambler mentality. People who embrace this mindset convince themselves they'll be heroic MacGyver types in a crisis, improvising brilliant solutions under pressure. They say, I'm sure I'll figure it out, or I'll think of something when the time comes, without ever walking through potential problems in real life. This approach often springs from overconfidence or from simply not wanting to face the hard truth that real emergencies can be disorienting, scary, and chaotic beyond anything we typically experience in our 9-to-5 routines. The big problem here is that high-stress situations actually shrink our ability to think rationally. When adrenaline and fear flood your system, your brain may slip into tunnel vision, your hands can shake, and simple tasks can feel complex. If you've never practiced turning off your home's gas line, you might blank out on how to do it when your heart is hammering and a fire is licking at your back fence. If you've never started a camp stove or tested your solar lanterns, you might find yourself fumbling around while your house is pitch black, with no phone signal or outside help available. And it's not just about the mechanical steps or gear usage. Think of the emotional chaos that can accompany disasters. You might have kids crying, or a spouse who's injured, or you could be hearing conflicting rumors about what roads are open or which stores have supplies left. Suddenly, your brain is juggling 15 urgent questions at once, and if your plan relies on last-second brilliance, you're rolling the dice in an extremely high-stakes game. Another angle is supply shortages. I can't count how many times I've seen people say, if something big happens, I'll just head to the store and grab what I need. But guess what? That's exactly what everyone else is thinking too. Stores can be picked clean in a matter of hours at the first sign of widespread trouble. Or the roads can jam up so badly that you can't even reach the shop in question. By the time you get there, you're pushing your cart through aisles of ransacked shelves. That's not a position you want to be in, especially if you have no backup plan at home. The antidote is simpler than you might think. Practice, even if it feels inconvenient or silly. Do a weekend test where you pretend the grid is down. Cook meals on a camp stove or a barbecue grill. Use only flashlights and battery lanterns after sundown. Monitor how bored or restless everyone gets if the TV and internet are off limits. Check if you can access local news via a battery-powered radio or if your phone's power bank actually gives you enough juice to stay in communication for a full day or two. By going through these scenarios, you'll see your weak points and can fix them when the stakes are low. That could mean buying a better quality headlamp, learning how to store water in 5-gallon jugs, or setting up a communal game plan so family members don't panic when the lights go out. Real improvisation relies on a base of skills you've actually rehearsed, not on blind optimism. If you're serious about readiness, you'll realize it's much easier to handle the unexpected if you've practiced possible scenarios in low-pressure settings. Yet, being determined to handle everything yourself can also flip into a whole new problem if you believe you don't need any sort of group or outside connection at all. Mindset number 3 is, I can do it all alone, sometimes called the lone wolf trap. It's easy to see where this romantic ideal comes from. We've all watched movies where a lone protagonist survives in the wilderness or navigates a post-apocalyptic city with just a backpack and a rifle. There's a certain appeal to the self-reliant hero who doesn't have to trust anyone else. But real-life disasters tend to grind people down quickly if they don't have at least some allies. Imagine trying to stand guard over your property 24 hours a day, while also handling cooking, cleaning, gathering or purifying water, assisting with medical needs, and keeping morale high among family members or neighbors who might be depending on you. Sooner or later, you'll need sleep, or you'll injure yourself, or you'll simply run out of time to do everything. That's precisely why people have historically come together for safety and resource sharing in times of trouble. Consider how easy it can be if you have even one neighbor who also wants to keep watch, or a friend who knows basic first aid, or someone who's good at mechanical repairs for a generator. You don't have to form a huge commune or wave a big Prepper Alliance flag. It can start with small gestures, noticing that the elderly man 2 houses down might need help if the power goes out, or realizing that a family across the street has a great set of garden tools that could help you grow more food if groceries become scarce. Low-key acts of kindness and shared chores create trust over time without requiring you to reveal every detail of your stockpile or your plans. If you live in a place where neighbors aren't that friendly, you might look to family members in a neighboring town or close friends a short drive away. You can work out an arrangement. If your city has to evacuate, you head to their place. If their area floods, they come to you. You could set up a shared communication system, like a simple radio frequency or group text chain, so you can alert each other if big trouble is brewing. None of this means you let your guard down completely or trust people blindly. Instead, you maintain some privacy, but build small networks of mutual support. Not only does this approach lighten your workload, but it also boosts morale. Knowing you can pass the watch off to someone else for a few hours can help you recharge. Having someone else around to bounce ideas off of can clarify critical decisions. The truth is, being totally isolated can wear on you emotionally. In an extended disaster, depression and fatigue can sneak up on you, leading to poor judgment. That's the invisible cost of the lone wolf mindset. People sometimes think they're safer alone because they don't have to worry about others stealing their supplies. But if you vet the right folks and establish trust carefully, you reduce your risk more effectively. At the same time, no amount of group building helps if you won't admit that a crisis can get really bad. Mindset number 4 is, it won't be that bad, which is fueled by what psychologists call the normalcy bias. This bias convinces us that things won't stray too far from what we're used to because, well, they usually don't. For most of our lives, the daily routine remains consistent. The sun comes up, you go to work, you come home, maybe you watch some TV, go to bed, and repeat the cycle. Even if a small emergency pops up, like a brief power outage, it generally resolves soon. Because of that, when a bigger threat looms, it's tempting to dismiss warnings as overblown. You see, people do it every hurricane season. They always say it'll be the storm of the century, but it never is. Yet sometimes it really is the storm of the century, and those who dismiss the warnings find themselves chest deep in floodwaters, wishing they'd evacuated the day before. Or take wildfires that sweep across drought-stricken land. One day the skies are clear, and the next day, thick smoke is rolling in. In places like California and Maui, some people waited too long to leave because they figured they'd see the flames coming far in advance, only to realize that high winds can push fire toward your home at frightening speed. By then, the roads might be choked with other late evacuees or cut off entirely. The normalcy bias can also manifest in ignoring early signals of civil unrest or infrastructure breakdown. Think of how quickly store shelves emptied in various cities when local protests escalated, or how swiftly entire banking systems can freeze if there's a hacking scandal or a currency crisis. If you insist, it can't happen here, you'll be caught off guard when it does, rummaging for supplies or a safe route out while others who paid attention left early or stocked up before the rush. The easiest fix for the normalcy bias is to force yourself to act on credible signs rather than ignoring them. If a big storm is forecast, fill your car's gas tank, charge all your devices, buy a few extra essentials, and go over your plan in case you need to evacuate. This might mean you spend a few bucks unnecessarily if nothing happens, but that's far preferable to being unprepared if it does. Another tip is to build a habit of checking multiple sources, local meteorologists, official government sites, and community groups where people share real-time observations. If a common threat emerges, like that a storm is definitely intensifying, take it seriously. You don't have to panic, but you should take early action while lines are short and roads are open. Too often, people mock those who pack up and leave a day early, calling them paranoid, only to realize the paranoid folks are the ones who escape the gridlock and find a safe place to stay. However, even if you accept that a crisis can be dire, you can still get blindsided if you assume you'll remain untouched simply by being nice or staying out of trouble. Mindset number 5 is, if I don't fight, I'll be fine, which many refer to as the passive prey fallacy. It's a belief that you can coast through a serious crisis simply by not attracting attention, assuming no one will bother you if you don't bother them. Now, in everyday life, that's often true. Keeping your head down and minding your own business is a good way to avoid petty conflicts. But in a real SHTF scenario, where emergency services are delayed or non-existent, and where fear, desperation, or criminal intent can spread like wildfire, being passive can make you a walking target. Looters tend to look for soft spots, houses with no visible security, people who seem timid or alone, vehicles that appear unguarded. If your plan is just to hope and pray that intruders skip you, you're rolling the dice with your family's safety. The best approach is to layer your defenses, even in simple ways. Strengthen your doors with better locks and reinforced frames. Add a motion sensor floodlight that kicks on if anyone approaches your property at night. If it's allowed where you live, consider some form of self-defense, maybe a firearm you've trained with properly, or non-lethal tools like pepper spray. The critical part is knowing how to use these tools under stress. Owning a shotgun but never practicing can do more harm than good if you panic and don't remember the safety protocol. Being aware of your surroundings is also a powerful deterrent. Walk with your shoulders back, making occasional eye contact with people around you rather than hunching over your phone. Predators notice body language, and they typically steer clear of those who look alert and confident. It also helps to set up some basic family or group signals, like a code word that means lock the doors immediately or call a neighbor. Even if you never have to use it, that one step can save precious seconds if you sense danger creeping up. Some folks worry that preparing for violence puts you on edge or makes you paranoid, but it can actually reduce anxiety. Think about how much calmer you'll feel knowing you have something to fall back on if trouble finds you. This mindset shift is especially vital in extended crises, where stressed people might be looking for resources and ready to bully or intimidate anyone they think won't fight back. When you move past the assumption that you can just stay invisible, you gain the power to establish boundaries, protect your supplies, and protect the people who matter most. Now that we've examined all 5 mindsets, dependency, overconfidence and improvisation, lone wolf thinking, normalcy bias, and passive prey assumptions, it's time to bring them together into a final overview of how to replace these pitfalls with a more balanced, resilient approach. We've just gone through 5 dangerous mindsets that can seriously derail your survival plan. Relying on someone else to save you, thinking you'll improvise your way through, believing you can handle it all alone, ignoring the warning signs, and assuming staying quiet will keep you safe. These aren't rare. They're common, everyday assumptions built from living in a mostly stable world. But when things fall apart fast, those same assumptions can turn deadly. The good news is, you don't need a bunker or a fortune to shift your thinking. Mindset is free, and changing yours starts with simply being honest about what could go wrong and taking small steps to close those gaps. Maybe it's storing a few extra gallons of water, learning how to turn off your gas, or having a quick chat with a neighbor about teaming up if things go sideways. It might be picking up a basic self-defense skill, walking your neighborhood with more awareness, or just running a test weekend without power. The goal isn't to live in fear. It's to build habits that give you confidence when things don't go as planned. And if people around you aren't on board yet, don't stress. Just lead by quiet example. Often it only takes one calm person in a blackout or storm to get others thinking differently. Thanks for hanging in through all 5 mindsets. If something here helped shift your thinking or gave you a new idea, let me know in the comments. And if you want more practical, no-nonsense prepping tips, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. At the end of the day, gear is great, but your mindset is what holds everything together. Stay sharp, stay steady, and keep doing the work. Now that'll pay off when it really counts.